Well, good morning, and many thanks for joining our monthly deep dive into the world of marketing. For those new to Pimento, a huge welcome. I'm Stephen Knight, CEO and founder of Pimento, an independent network of 165 agencies and consultants who in turn employ 3,000 specialist marketeers who offer services in 97 different marketing disciplines to support brands and clients both here and around the world. So today we're focused on the changing world of Google Analytics. All of us in the world of marketing are pretty comfortable and confident with the way in which we work, perhaps with Google already, but they're changing the game again. So we pulled together a panel of leading authorities on the subject. So I'm really, really pleased to welcome Daisy Sanyok, who is head of measurement at the Fountain Partnership. And she's responsible on a daily basis for using Google, amongst many other instruments, to review the data tracking and conversion goals for their clients on websites, as well as implementing and consulting on customized tracking solutions for complex projects. She leads the team at Fountain. For those not familiar with Fountain, they are a leading digital marketing agency, a full service digital marketing agency, and actually have worked for Google both as an agency but also as on a supplier relationship for many years. And Daisy herself has worked as a full stack web developer in digital marketing since 2013. And now obviously it's all about the data, and that's where she focuses her time and energies. And she's responsible, to say, for Fountain tracking the right goals for their clients and capturing the whole user journey. So great to have you on board, and thank you, Daisy, for joining us today. Kevin Milnes is the founder of Liberandium Digital. He's a founder of a specialist web analytics agency. Liberandium Digital is a self-confessed Google for evangelist, and so they're very excited about the arrival of GA4. He has 20 years experience in the digital world, most of which has been spent in analytics. He's worked with such brands as National Express, Cruise.co.uk, Luxury Cottages, University of Birmingham, Stagecoach. He's on a mission to help businesses get the most out of GA4 and realise the potential of the digital data. And finally, in the hot seat, asking all the questions today, you'll note I'm sitting back and listening to someone who's arguably got more experience than almost anyone, I would suggest to you, and that is Marcus, who is the co-founder of Fountain. He founded that agency in 2009, and his vision and passion is for evidence-based marketing. It's all about measurement, full funnel measurement at that. He has a background as a copywriter, SEO, PPC, and a direct marketeer. He's also an experienced trainer and an accomplished public speaker. His essential skill is obviously the ability to create marketing strategies for their clients, and actually completely and utterly driven by ROI and focus on evidence-based research. He's the brain behind Fountain's approach to delivering returns through evidence-based marketing, and he's passionate about making the marketing industry better. So who better than to actually have Marcus in the hot seat? Thank you for doing this today for us, Marcus, and I'm going to hand over to you now, if I may, and sit back and listen to your words of wisdom, if I may.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen. Okay, guys, so GA4 is upon us, and we each have some decisions to make. So I want this webinar to be really useful for you guys, and I'm keen for you by the end, not just to feel informed, but to feel empowered to put together a really clear action plan you feel confident to implement. Obviously, as Stephen said, we've got two brilliant experts for us today to help with that. My job as host really is to be the useful idiot, I think, to ask the very basic questions to give you the answers that you need. But as Stephen said, as we go through, put some questions into the chat and he'll read them out at the end. So let's begin with the background. I want to touch on this briefly just to get the story set up. Most of the time we will be talking about what you guys actually need to do. But to start off with, Kevin, what is GA4?
So I suppose what I like to think of is GA4's it's sunshine, it's rainbows, and it's magic unicorns. But I've possibly been drinking a little bit too much of the Kool-Aid. In reality, it's the biggest upgrade we've seen to Google's analytic platform well, realistically, since they launched the platform. And how I tend to get people to think about this is it's almost a once in a career opportunity to get your web analytics right, to get your customer data right.
Wow, okay. And why is it happening now then, Daisy? Why have we got to do this?
Well, Kevin kind of touched upon this. It's a big shakeup. It needs to happen. So if you think we've been using universal analytics for the best part of 14 or 15 years now, and the web has changed. So it's old news, it's old data, there's old structures. And to be honest, it's surprising that Google hasn't done something like this sooner, considering how fast the web is evolving. So it's overdue, but it's still scary. So it was time.
It's now time. We've got it. Kevin, on that, you're speaking to a lot of people right now having to migrate. How are people feeling? What stages are they at with their migration? Obviously, this is a big turnout today, so people want to know. But where are people at with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite the 5 stages of grief, but yeah, what we tend to find is people generally falling into 3 camps. That they're either kind of head in the sand, hoping it goes away, Google will change their mind, just hold your nerve, play chicken. Or they've had a go, and this is actually the bracket we find loads of people in. They've had a go, and they've either got stuck, it's more complicated than they thought it was going to be, it's not what they thought it's going to be, or actually they get part way through the process and go, actually, this is bigger, this is a bigger opportunity, there's more we can do with it. And at that point, they pause and think. They want to make sure they get it right. And then we have the final bracket. And apologies if anyone falls into this category and disagree with what I'm about to say. But they're kind of in the smug but naive camp. They've already done it. They've ticked the box. They probably did it some point last year. It was possibly a technology-led change. Let's tick the box. GDPR, Y2K, job done, tags in place. And then they never log in. They never look at the experience within Google Analytics 4. And there's a storm coming when Universal goes away and they jump into Google Analytics 4 for the first time and realize actually how big of a change this is. And my hope today is hopefully that we maybe get through to a few people that are in that camp and get them to start looking at the data that they've already got and thinking about maybe it needed a little bit more effort than they planned. And then look, the final camp is where I want everyone to get to, which is they've seen the potential, they realize what the platform can do, and they're actually using Google Analytics 4 to look at their customer data in a completely different way. They're not just replicating what they did in Universal Analytics. So that's my goal, that's my mission, that's where I want to get people to.
I think just to jump on, sorry, Marcus, if I can jump on the back of that, Kevin, it's for Camp 3 specifically. So they've maybe done something a year ago. They haven't kind of logged back in. Maybe a little bit of the Dunning-Kruger effect moment there, not sure. But on top of that, it's fair to say that GA4 is still an evolving platform. So it's not like this is developed, ready to go, and we all just need to jump on board. It is still very much in the works. So I think this is something where even if you do have something established already, you will need to go back and revise it because Google are still building on top. I think just last week, I had to change around a bunch of reports because, hey-ho, explorations had evolved again. So it's exciting, but there's still a lot of work. And I think we can all make a lot of it. I think it's going to be very useful. Sorry, I've gone off piece there. Like I said, the opportunity is there. Like the fact that it's evolving, we get a chance to inform the conversation. So I think this is a prime time to evaluate and feedback and be part of that growing platform.
And it's a really good point as well. If you looked at the platform a year ago, it probably wasn't great, and there was a lot of things that put you off. But it is still kind of in beta. They're not saying it's in beta, but it kind of is. The good news that means is it's getting better week in, week out.
Yes.
So if you only looked at it a year ago, look again. You'll be amazed at the change.
Even if you looked last week.
Yes. Yes. Or yesterday.
This might be concerning people a little bit. We'll get onto that shortly. But what's the soundbite here? People are watching this. They're going, okay, I need to communicate this either to clients or internally if I'm client side. What's the soundbite here? The change is happening, but it's still in beta. Like, what's the thing that you want people to be able to say? Here's how to communicate it clearly and to get people on board. Like, how's it going to affect the campaigns?
So in terms of affecting campaigns, and I know the problem is we can never talk about GA4 without referencing universal analytics because that's what we're used to. So I'm trying here to keep a lot of Kevin's enthusiasm for GA4 without sounding too doom about universal analytics. So, but the way that I think about campaigns is it does depend how you're using the analytics data at the moment. So in terms of what you need to do for your campaigns, GA4 represents a huge opportunity in terms of the measurement. So it gives you a much, much bigger picture of the whole ecosystem of your business. So in terms of marketing performance and ROI, you will get a better, bigger, more data-driven picture. So that's one half of the piece. The other is the measurement inside the platform. So what GA4 does in a way that Universal Analytics doesn't is feedback to Google Ads. So this is a real future-proofing exercise in automatic optimization, what I like to call feeding the robots. But basically, if you are able to measure things effectively on your site, you will help automate spend on your campaigns and generally improve performance.
So it will help eliminate waste or reduce waste. So the way you're running it with Universal Analytics, there's going to be things you don't see that you can't measure. This is going to allow you to measure more, basically. So is that, am I getting this right?
Yes, it's not just that, it's a more modular system. So it's a more bite-sized system which will allow Google to automate your goals. So it's not just that, I suppose, as like Kevin said before, Universal Analytics is just out of date. It's old news. This kind of automation wasn't possible. So the kind of connectivity between GA4 and Google Ads and the rest of your campaigns will be a lot stronger than anything that we've seen before. And especially, I know we're kind of coming onto it later, but in terms of things like privacy, this will help feed, we keep coming back to this data-driven kind of system. So this will help feed that automation. It helps model, there's a system called modeled conversions, which isn't possible without GA4. And that's all to do with the aggregate data that the platform is collecting to allow it to feed back.
Okay, so
sorry, Mark. Just the only thing I'd add, just in terms of from a soundbite point of view, that the way we tend to frame it is, this is a time to stop measuring users and start understanding people. So even though the platform's still evolving, it's really important that you jump in now, start to see what you can do with the data, the different views of your customers you can create, what the segmentation engine within GA4 is capable of. And start making that data available within the organization, even if it is as a kind of sample of a teaser of what's come next, because you need to start getting your stakeholders to think about web data differently. They'll be used to users, they'll be used to bounce rate, they'll be used to conversion rate. And you need to start to get them into a frame of mind of that the art of the possible is different now.
That's brilliant. I always say in life and business, the closer you get to the truth, the better decisions you make. And I love what you're saying about understanding people rather than users. Okay, I want to keep us on time. I think I did have a question about privacy and first-party data. I might sneak it in later with that horrible four-letter word GDPR, because I really want to actually talk about what people need to do. Okay, so we've set the scene. Fine. What are the options? Okay, what are the things you could do? Because you could just do nothing, right, and just let it migrate by itself. Like, what are the options and what are the benefits and drawbacks of them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you could genuinely do nothing. You could stop measuring your website, and it terrifies me. But people do actually do that. You can run a business on a balance sheet. I think you can run it better with web analytics, but there is the option of just do nothing. There is the option of let the robots take care of it. Google's robots have been busy at work migrating people automatically. If you want a view of your business that's been generated by a generic pre-canned robot at Google HQ, fine. It's an option. It's not one that I'd recommend. There are alternatives out there. There are some expensive alternatives out there, like Adobe. And if you're already playing with their kind of their experience cloud, what used to be their marketing cloud, then that might be a credible option for you. It's an expensive option for you, but it's genuinely a powerful enterprise platform. And then there's some other players on the market. In particular, Mixpanel is growing in popularity. It's a classic SaaS model. If you've got very little traffic, you can get some great functionality for nothing. They give some of it away for free. But as your business scales, it gets expensive. So again, if you've got a site with a lot of traffic, even a tool like that's going to be pretty expensive. So in that kind of free-to-air space, Google is still, the only credible player in town, certainly at scale. So for me, the main option, and the option with all the pros, is to jump in, double down on Google Analytics 4, and start to look at actually how can we do blank piece of paper, completely rethink how we're using digital data in our marketing, in developing our customer experience and our products, and how you can really leverage that segmentation platform to get the most out of it.
Right.
I think, sorry, Kevin, just to highlight the opportunity there as well, like one of the reasons we keep emphasizing the difference between GA4 and what we've seen historically is, yes, this isn't just a simple migration. We don't just want to carry A over to B. The whole point here is we have a whole new structure that we can use to rethink your business goals and your KPIs. So we are trying to take an approach of a much more heuristic evaluation of data to start to decide what real actions look like in GA4.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate because some people client side perhaps, and also some businesses, they're going to go to stakeholders and say, we need to spend all this time and resource migrating, and they'll say, well, we've heard that Google do it automatically, so what can't we just see? Well, if we do nothing, and can't we just run an experiment for a couple of months to see what happens? Is that, because people are going to say that, so I imagine I've seen that already on LinkedIn when I posted about this webinar. They go, oh, well, we're just going to see. Is that a fair experiment, guys, or is that just stupid?
Well, what happens if you do nothing, specifically with,
yes,
if you don't touch your universal analytics? Okay, so already, if some of you have started setting up a GA4 account, you will have seen the migration options that are available. And there's a nice little checklist that Google uses to help hold your hand to take you through. And as thorough as it looks, it's still quite basic and it's quite rudimentary. The backup system that Google have for letting the algorithm or the robots just move you over to GA4, they've fondly called Jumpstart. I don't know why, but that's what it's called. So I suppose the pitfalls there are, as we've mentioned, it's very unlikely you're going to have an accurate picture of your data, because as much as you will have tried to feed these actions into Google Analytics over the years, actions on your website will have changed, the nuance will go, and Google's robots will not understand that when they port it over. Also, because the shape of the data is changing, that migration isn't going to be like for like. It's sort of apples and oranges. The only caveat I have to that is that if you happen to have a very page-based metric system, you might be fine. But most of us are beyond that now, I think. I think we're measuring user actions. I think we're using audiences. That kind of stuff is just not going to get moved over effectively.
You just define page-based for people who don't know what it is.
Page-based, literally a user viewing a URL, and often in terms of very basic conversion measurements, that would be perhaps a confirmation page after a form. So that kind of goal, lovely. I'm sure Google GA4's migration could handle that. Others, less so. Kevin, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, look, I get asked this question, quite a lot, quite directly. It's what we do for a bit as a business, and the way I always look at this is, look, if you think that your business is generic, if you think that your customer experience is the average, if you think your website is doing nothing special, then the automated process will probably do a fine job of taking that very generic, very beige, very average business and replicating it in Google Analytics 4. But I can bet with near 100% certainty, even your finance director doesn't think that your business is beige, and thinks that there's something you do which is custom, which is unique. And where there's unique, where there's custom, that's where you need to be putting the effort into saying, actually, how do we tailor what Google Analytics 4 does to our specific business? Because that's the superpower with GA4. Universal was always great at kind of cookie cutter e-commerce businesses. It could do those out of the box with its eyes closed. The minute you had a slightly unusual customer flow, maybe a two-stage sales process, maybe some offline activity going on, it groaned and creaked. GA4 takes all of that in its stride if you plan properly and if you get that customization right from the start.
So by beige, you essentially mean a company that's not really running any campaigns. It's a brochure website. It's going to be optimized however it's optimized in search engines, and that's it. It's just there. they're the ones where you think it's not going to be great, but they probably could just leave it. They're not investing anything in any paid media. Is that what we mean by beige? Or
yeah,
or
yeah. Well, I mean like the background behind me. So yeah, I mean, look, what we're talking about here are probably the people who, maybe never even log in to Google Analytics, or if they do, it's maybe to get users and bounce rate and stick it into a slide in a board pack that no one ever reads. And if that's you and that's where your business is at, then automation is an option. But there's a way of doing it differently. Doesn't matter how basic what you're doing is. There's still opportunity in GA4 to bring something new to the table.
Brilliant. Okay.
I think just to jump lastly on the back of that, a small public service announcement around, just because we're talking about what we need to do, it's because it's GA4 related, but it's also, again, how this relates specifically with Google Ads, because it's something that I think Google have kept quite quiet, and we only learned it as an agency partner fairly recently, maybe February, is that if your current campaigns are relying on universal analytics imported goals or universal analytics audiences, those are going to be essentially sunset. So you will no longer have automatic bidding on those by the end of April. So if you haven't already got something in place, so a native Google Ads goal for your campaigns, or a GA4 goal being imported into Google Ads, you will start to lose out on automated bidding and optimization. And it's just something that seems to get buried when we talk about GA4. I'm not sure why.
That's pretty substantial.
So I'm sorry, it's the end of April, guys.
Yes, no, the clock is ticking. Okay, I just want to touch briefly on what changes people have to do. Just on, you mentioned other providers, Kevin. Who specifically would benefit from a different provider, a paid bespoke service? Just quickly, is it going to be, what, B2B SaaS or just drop in, like, who are the sort of people you think would benefit from using Adobe or Matimo or someone else, for example?
I mean, I genuinely think that GA4 with the 360 implementation can go toe to toe with any enterprise solution now. But it's that enterprise word. If you are huge scale organization, genuinely seismic volumes of data, then you might want to shop around. If you fall within the traffic quotas for Google Analytics 4, which are huge, there's still millions of events. If you fall within that quota, genuinely, I'd be looking at what you could get out of Google Analytics.
Great. So unless you're beige, and even if you're enterprise and doing something very bespoke, GA4 can still go toe to toe. So, okay, what do people need to do? Like, what are the changes they need to make? And I'm open this to both of you guys just to jump in. And obviously that's how long is a piece of string question. But
well, I suppose, do you want the bad news to start? Well, the bad news to start with is you need to change everything. It's completely different. The way it tracks is different. What it tracks is different. What you can report on is different. How it reports on that is everything changes. So you need to do blank piece of paper. So you need to start, if you're not already doing it, you need to start planning. What are your business objectives? What are your different customer segments? What do their individual customer journeys look like? What are the actions that they take along the way? And what are those till ringing moments? What are the actions that are conversions that generate value for you as a business? Not just you buy something online. This isn't just about e-commerce. It could be lead generation. It could be white paper downloads, tutorial completions. It could be engagement with a gaming app. Whatever those till ringing moments are for you that generate value, you need to plan those out before you do anything. Look, you could stick the basic tag up there, start collecting some basic user level data. It always helps to have something in the sandbox to play with. But I certainly wouldn't start implementing events until you've got that plan.
I'd say as well, it's not just, so yes, absolutely the till ringing moments, but I think one of the beautiful things about this as well is what we're calling internally the micro conversions. So the point that we can, the great thing with GA4 is some of the funnel visualization which is available. So yes, get used to the platform, get the tag on there, start playing around with it, get used to the reporting, because this has really been a journey of two halves. One is getting the data into GA4 and the other is actually understanding it once it's in there. because GA4 does not hold your hand in the same way that Universal Analytics used to. There are default reports, but it opens up a huge amount of freedom in creating your own. And to do that, it has cut back on the standard reporting it offers. So one of the things that we found incredibly useful is not just to think about that endpoint goal, but some of the steps along the way and building that data as well, because it just helps to build, as you say, Kevin, the people picture.
Yeah, and it's like I use the term kind of CRM because that's how I think of what you can do with Google Analytics 4. So it's very much about kind of cohorts and segments, and it's about those little magic moments that move you from being an engaged visitor to being a visitor that's showing intent to purchase or intent to convert. Now that's not going to be a till ringing moment, but it's bloody important in getting you to that till ringing moment. So it's those micro conversions that move you from one segment to another on that journey, on that customer journey of getting to the point where the till rings. So 100% agree.
So essentially it's looking at the whole funnel, essentially, all the touch points of till ringing, like mapping that out and then looking at how you can measure that within GA4. So where do people begin? Imagine I'm a marketing manager. I know I need to do this. I'm running, for example, an e-commerce website. What would you suggest if you were me? Just where do I start with this?
Start where the money is. So if you are a big e-commerce site, let's get that purchase measured first. Let's figure out what that looks like. So for context, I come from the measurement implementation side of this. So I'm sitting there in Tag Manager working with web developers on how to get this data into platforms. So a lot of my answers are going to be very technical in that respect. So practically speaking, and I'm going to have to ask you guys for the more blue sky stuff, but you want a nerd with you to help plan some of this out. You need someone that can help you a little bit translate what your business goals are and what those ideas are into those data chunks and what they look like. You'll get a feel for it and how it looks, but because it's so new, this is the opportunity to reshape that. And rather than thinking, this is what we were measuring before, we need to make sure we're measuring that again. It's like, no, start clean. What is my business actually doing? Map that out, break it down, and feed it in.
And the thing I'd add to that, one of the things which we use, which we find really powerful, is to document the customer experience. Screenshot everything, draw a circle around everything that you could want to track, because we've all got kind of trapped in this way of thinking of what Google Analytics can do, and that limiting what we do from a data collection point of view. So capturing everything, being able to print it out and draw on it. I'm old school. I like being able to scribble on things. But also make it broader than just your website. Don't limit your thinking to what happens on your website or in your app. That there's the potential to capture data way beyond the website visit, into data from physical locations, telephone data, external CRM data. So look at that whole customer experience.
Okay, so we need a nerd. We need to speak to stakeholders about what success looks like. So there is probably needs to be a business case put together for doing this, because we need time and resource essentially. And kind of what from what I understand is if what you measure you can improve. But I guess that's part of what people need to figure out is, okay, how much resource do I need to put into this? If I need to hire a nerd, for example. Sorry, I keep using the word nerd, but
I'm sorry, that was my language.
The nerds will inherit the earth.
But it's kind of like, but I can see, there's sort of three things it can do, right? Make money, save money, and drive efficiency. Those are sort of the three things that we can put into a business case, presumably, and that's quite exciting. I mean, Kevin, are you finding that it's quite easy, people get there's a business case for this, and actually like the potential when it is set up, and I appreciate it's still in beta and it's evolving, but the dream you're selling sounds quite nice, to be honest.
It's a really interesting opportunity, because the reality is it's a bit of a we have to do it business case. So a lot of people, they use the data within their business, so it's quite an easy conversation with a finance team that what we've got is going to switch off. We need to switch the new thing on. They're used to this conversation with IT teams all the time. Fear. You have to do this. Okay, we'll do it. Just make sure something doesn't break. So people are already coming this with an acceptance that they need to spend. The opportunity is to think about, actually, don't spend it on compliance. Spend it on opportunity. Spend it on getting the right data at a customer segment level to understand what your marketing is doing at a far more granular level. You know, this isn't just I dump in some traffic, I get some conversions, I've got a return on ad spend. You know, this is which bit of my marketing is driving engagement, which bit of it is driving intent, which bit of it is driving retention, and being able to take that very segmented view, which with my experience, you know, working client side is finance teams respond really well to that type of language, less well to a return on ad spend language. They're a bit more cynical about that. So I think, you know, there's the opportunity in marketing spend point of view, and there's the opportunity for driving conversion. You know, this is CRO on steroids if you get it right, because you're talking about segmented customer journeys with micro conversions. Yeah, the amount of possibility there to tweak that customer experience and drive up your conversion rate is, you know, it's huge. So you've got a strong compliance background. We kind of have to spend it anyway. So if we're going to spend it, let's spend it driving improvement. That to me is how I would position it you know, if I was sat you know, back in my client side days.
On conversion optimization, sorry.
No, you go, Mark.
But on the CRO stuff, on steroids, I mean, that's a very simple case to make. You know, digital marketing is essentially a spreadsheet exercise. You can actually just tweak those percentages at each stage of the funnel and say, look, here's the compound effect, here's the return on investment. So actually it becomes a very easy argument. And but so, sorry, Daisy, you jump in.
No, I was going to say as well that I know we don't want to focus on the compliance, but I almost want to put the silver lining on the compliance side, which is, again, like, and I know I don't know if we'll come back to it, but I'm going to bring up that privacy again. It's not just the fact that universal analytics is going away, it's also that the web is changing, and GA4 is a privacy conscious opportunity. And one of the things that Google is doing there is improving the way that it stitches users together in what they call a modeled way. So the idea is that depending on users' consent statuses, they can feed the data into an algorithm and model the user so that it is not a directly tracked representation. Why this is interesting is that increasingly users are going to pursue their privacy. They're likely to opt out. Users will opt out more and more in the future, and measuring activity will become harder. The earlier you adopt these models, which are able to train Google on how your users use your websites, the better returns you're going to get from that data in the future. So the more you start giving now, the better you will have later. And the more future-proofed your data will be.
If we're opening the privacy box, which I feel we've teased it, we've teased the lid. I feel it's wide open now. So yeah, we need to dive in, and this is the one and only time you will hear me being cautionary when I talk about Google Analytics 4, and it's because Google Analytics, Google have gone out and they've put a big sticker on Google Analytics 4, and they've said GDPR compliant, and a lot of people are going, well, the label on the box says it's compliant, so let's go for it. The world is our oyster. As long as we use Google Analytics, we're golden. And yeah, to me, even if it's true, even if Google Analytics, the platform, is 100% GDPR compliant, guaranteed, and they're not saying guaranteed, even if it is, it will be for Google, not for you as a business. It's not guaranteeing that how you use Google Analytics will be compliant. And there's some really powerful features in there. Some of it allows you to share a different level of data with Google than you have done before. They're giving you a free platform in exchange for that data. That data. So it's a value exchange. So you're kind of technically you're selling customer data in return for services. This isn't saying don't do it. What I'm trying to say is be very aware of the settings you choose. Be very aware of what they're doing. Are you modeling data? Is that modeling data having any impacts on decisions you make about what customers can or can't have, whether they can have credit or not? These things have compliance issues. What are you sharing with Google? And then make sure you've got the right advice. And it's not advice from people like me and Daisy. It's advice from legal professionals on what does that mean in terms of your compliance? What do you actually need to say in your privacy policy? Because you're probably just saying, we use web analytics so we can track what people do on our website and make it better. Well, you're probably doing more than that. So you need to say that you're doing more than that. And the same from a consent basis. Be clear on what you're asking for consent for. Because the one thing that isn't GDPR compliant is saying you're doing one thing when in reality you're doing another.
Yeah, I think key to that as well is that we're so used to, in universal analytics, the ability just to toggle a button on or off and not really worrying too much about the repercussions. I mean, apart from turning off a conversion. But with GA4, these privacy settings, I think it can be very tempting just to turn some of them on and think, excellent, more data. But yeah, the point that Kevin's making and that we do need to strike home is that you need to take responsibility for adjusting these. And if you're taking these actions on part of a client or on behalf of somebody else, you just need to have a process, I suppose, for making sure that the decisions you're making are going to be reflected accurately. Like, you can't have these decisions happening behind closed doors. Everyone needs to be part of the conversation and be aware of what's being enabled, what's being disabled. From one slightly more positive privacy point of view, I know that there's been a lot of talk about GA4, Google in general, actually, and the EU and data processing in the EU. One thing that we have found from our agency conversations with Google is that when you register that your data is in the EU, Google will not send that overseas. Yeah. They have data processing in the EU. So that is one nice little safeguard that is fairly idiot proof, for which we are grateful.
And there are, Daisy, there are some, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's some third-party technology providers in the market scaremongering and saying that that isn't the case. So it's really important. If someone's selling you an extra piece of kit that you can add on because of this, they're mis-selling. There is the ability in Google to do that.
Yeah.
Right, guys, I'm mindful of time, and obviously I was avoiding privacy a little bit because it can be a black hole. We want to
should we shut the box, Marcus? Shut the box.
Please do. Okay, so we've got, I think, 7 questions in the chat. I think just before we go to those, I think there's 2 things really. There's, you've got people client side, saying, well, what should I be saying to my agency? Like, what should I actually be doing? I'm about to create this plan. Yes, I get the idea of, mapping stuff out, needing the geek. Like, what should I be saying to agencies? And then, what should agencies also be doing as well? I think we can leave with those. And then any other final sound bites you want to hammer home, now is your chance. And then in about 3 or 4 minutes, we'll jump to everyone's questions.
I can answer this from, agency side. I think the key thing that we've done, and that I'd hope other agencies are doing, is establishing a measurement implementation team. Like, this is the first time that organizations have needed a team for their web analytics. It's the first time that something like this has been a project. So I would say, don't stick your head in the sand, get organized and get that team together, get a group of people that can understand the platform, work with it, and help translate what you're doing into those events.
Coming at it from a client side point of view, I'd say you need to be making the conversation with your agencies about, this gives us an opportunity to take the segmented view. So what does that mean? Because that should be changing what you do in paid search, what you do in display, what you do on social. This shouldn't just be that you end up with, well, we're doing the same things we always did and reporting on it in the same way. If you've done that, you failed. Opportunity missed. So make sure right at the start, all conversations around, this is where the opportunity is to get this different view and to act on it differently, and to drive the conversation from that angle.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm now going to pull Mr. Knight back in for the final 15 minutes or so to go through the questions and ask them, if that's okay, Stephen.
Absolutely, lots of really good questions. So retracking some of the key points that have come up with today. Andrew Armitage, for those beige websites that you referred to earlier on, do they literally need to do nothing? No tracking code changes? With a few legacy clients that fall into the category, and I really don't want to spend time on going through the motions, but also don't want to be caught out when someone asks how much traffic they've had in 6 months' time. So what do you do with the beiges?
I mean, I think practically speaking, I think one of the things that Google is advertising is that if you have a modern I'm going to talk technical here. If you have a modern G tag implementation of your universal analytics, as long as it's got that G tag, you will get pulled over to GA4. So for the super beige, as long as at some point in the last 4 years, they upgraded to G tag over from the old classic analytics implementation, yes, you could technically do nothing. I think you'll regret it, but you could.
Okay.
The other thing I'd add is, don't wait 6 months to start sharing data, because one of the things I can absolutely guarantee is the number of users Google Analytics 4 reports will be different to what Universal reports. And it's because Universal sucked at calculating unique users. It was a bit of a nonsense number. GA4 is significantly better, and significantly better when it comes to unique users means it will tell you you've got less. So if you leave it 6 months, the risk is you're going to have a year-on-year report that says you're doomed, we're all doomed, everything's gone down. So you need to make sure, even if it's based, even if there's no technical changes required, you weren't using events, you weren't doing any custom conversions, it's just about traffic. Even if that's the case, you need to start benchmarking early so that everyone understands, the new number, and it's got some time to get comfortable with the fact that that number of users going down isn't bad, it's good. It means you've got more accurate data. Yeah.
I think this is something that we've not really touched upon too much, is just how we've talked about the kind of structural differences, but the data itself will be different between Universal Analytics and GA4. So something we do get asked is, how am I going to compare these two things? With some difficulty, I imagine. So what Kevin says is true. We need to be benchmarking now. So we need to be benchmarking GA4 data against itself as soon as possible, really, because we can make kind of trend comparisons with Universal Analytics, but numbers against each other are never going to fully add up because it's just a brand new structure.
Yeah. Okay. And if you can break
that in mind, we spoke about this, I think, earlier on, and I think one of the easiest ways for people, I think, to get their heads around exactly the differences between the two would be able to look at a dashboard. Now, obviously, I appreciate the dashboards are unique to your clients and there's also confidential information in it, but one of the things I think is a useful follow-up to today would be to take a dashboard in terms of how you would use it to look at client data currently, and maybe obviously put some dummy data in there, and actually then show the new GA version of the same, the GA4 version of the same, because that transparently will demonstrate the sorts of things that one will be able to track and the sorts of things that actually will be useful in the future, and how the metrics will change. Because as a non-digital marketeer, someone's had to kind of learn it on the run, as it were. Some of the analytics and some of the things that we've taken to be, really holy grail are going to be wiped out. And as you rightly say, it's going to be very difficult to compare apples with apples. But if you could show us a dashboard pre and post, that would be really helpful, I think. Is that something that we can do between Kevin and Daisy?
I'm sure it's something we can look at. I'm scanning my brain. If I'm looking into the air, that's because I'm thinking, is there a single like-for-like report? There might be one, but we can try to figure something out, at least to show the differences.
No, that would be really helpful. Another question here, if I may. Are there still issues with data discrepancies between Google Ads and Google Analytics? If so, are there features to highlight why and where the issues might be, configuration issues, for example?
I think this will always be an issue, and I'm going to maybe push this to Marcus as well, because I think he loves talking about it. It's attribution, and attribution is always going to be a bugbear, I suppose, because each platform wants to say that it did the thing to make the other thing happen. So Google Ads is going to, in some cases, over-report, just as Facebook will, or any other kind of marketing platform. The benefit of, I suppose, an aggregate web analytics is that it should paint the most accurate picture and the most balanced picture of all of those. I don't think we've seen enough data on GA4 reporting versus Google Ads. I anticipate the issues will be similar, but Marcus, I promise you get a word in here, so I'm going to invite you in.
I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but I think you can look at data sets and start extrapolating and going, okay, well, what do we think? And it's constant measurement and hypothesis and testing, really. But it's hard to get it perfect, I'm afraid. But we keep chipping away. I think that's what we try and do.
And I think one of the things which, while Google haven't come out and officially said this, you can see from some of the changes they're making is, there's one direction of traffic for Google, which is one tag to rule them all. So the tagging for Google Analytics 4 is their gold standard. So over time, I think you'll see more and more of the tagging for Google Ads will move on to that same tag we're using for GA4. Prediction, not fact, but that's my view.
Okay, and a lot of the kind of the platforms that have been developed in the last few years on using bot technology that begins to look at actually what is and what isn't genuine traffic. Are they going to have to start again with the new platform, or is it actually still going to be relevant to GA4 and actually determining what is genuine traffic and what is bot? Or is that nothing to do with anything?
It's not nothing to do with anything, but I think it's a slightly separate issue. I imagine, I guess if we're thinking about Universal Analytics spam, I guess because the data is a different shape, that's going to look different now. In terms of spam traffic, that's always going to be an issue with the site, I suppose. So that's sort of, real bot attacks that happen are going to happen regardless, and nothing will change there. I don't think there'd be any additional trading period that would need to happen with GA4. It's something we can have a look at, because it's not something I considered, is how, what I've always called Google Analytics spam, what that could look like in GA4 now. I don't know if you guys have any ideas.
No, I mean, certainly I think they've improved their capabilities around filtering out what is bad traffic. The one feature that is in GA4 that I think is really useful for this is anomaly tracking. So particularly in explorations, the custom reports in GA4, it will actually highlight this spike in traffic doesn't look right. Now that might be technically doesn't look right, or it might be it just looks like a one-off event. So it's got a lot better at kind of going, yeah, this increase, this spike that we're seeing, maybe it's not quite what you think it is. And I think that helps you to make more informed decisions, because you kind of it signals to you that maybe I should show a little bit of caution when I'm looking at that trend that's going that way, and it might actually be doing that. So I think that's a good feature that hopefully they'll roll out to the standard reports as well.
Okay. We're not going to get dragged back into GDPR, but there are a lot of questions that are coming up now to do with where the rules and responsibilities lie between the agency, the client, and Google. So I guess it'd be useful, I think, to kind of sort of lay those out for everyone as part of the follow-up. Kind of a rather simple question from an individual, not a million miles away from here. Is this all about Google attempting to gain an even larger market share?
Yes. Look, I think it's something that everyone overlooks with Google Analytics is, it exists for one reason and one reason only, so Google can sell more ad inventory. It's to give us better data on how that ad inventory performs, because that will encourage us to spend more money. But that's why they do it. They're not giving away this amazing piece of software out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it to get us to spend more money on advertising. So yes, user beware. Always be conscious of that bias.
Okay, so for me then, it's a bit like kind of changing the game of rugby, and suddenly someone actually has a new set of rules, and you've got to adapt pretty quickly to those rules in order to be able to actually get a competitive advantage. The essential thing is that if you don't take that opportunity, you're going to be missing out, and actually it's going to ultimately cost you more. So there's some clever stuff that's coming your way. We need to get to understand how to use it, or our agency does, or internally we need to get to use that. Where can people go to get better quality information to be able to actually learn the new rules, learn the game?
Well, you can start with Google's documentation. It's a little bit dry. Actually, that's not fair. They have some really good guides to begin with. So I think in terms of introducing you to the concept and some of the setup, they've actually released some really useful information, and we can find some links and send that out after this. I think there's also quite a strong third-party community around GA4. There's a lot of analytics nerds out there, not just us in the room, who've got some great tutorials or guidance or case studies on the things that they've done. I think I'm not going to start listing out websites here, but there's definitely something we can put together to point you in those directions.
But it is worth just warning everyone. What's out there in the market at the moment, it is quite technical. The resources, the training materials that are available, they are in the weeds. They're in the weeds of what you do and how you do it. Shameless plug, but it's a freebie. We've got an ebook on kind of what we see as the opportunity and how you can take advantage of it, completely free. If anyone wants to, give me a shout after the event, more than happy to share that.
Kevin, what we'll do, we'll put that in a follow-up note so people can download it. That'll be
Great.
really helpful. Thank you for that. There's also a real danger of information overload here, and actually everyone gets very excited about measuring everything. And as we all know, it's actually the analytics, the output, and the understanding of that relates to your business objectives, which is particularly important. So I think the question here is, how do we manage teams or clients wanting to track too much to factor in how this could affect website speed, ranking, SEO, digital carbon emissions, etc., etc.
Oh, what a
I think it's a
question.
statement rather than a question, really, isn't it?
Yes.
It's just,
I mean,
and I think the truth is, actually, it's what's important to you. What, as a brand, as a client, what is it actually? What metrics are important to you? The reality is, you'll have more data available to you to make better decisions. You just have to make sure you're tracking the right stuff and then analysing it. And then I think the earlier point you made is actually then educating internally, so that when management, senior management, board management, whatever it happens to be, SLTs, FDs, CFOs, etc., you're going to have to educate them in actually the new landscape in order they can actually understand what is and what is working and what isn't working, and why we don't track this stuff anymore.
Yes, I think there's a risk of shiny new toy syndrome with this and measuring things for measurement's sake. But you do absolutely risk clouding your data by that. We've had clients that have gone, "Can I measure all these button clicks?" I just had absolutely not. No, you can't. What are you ever going to do with that report? Also, usefully, GA4 does have hit limits, so you can exceed your data. So luckily, you can't have too many events. You can have a lot, but you do have to stop somewhere.
I mean, the flip side to that argument is, until you track it, you don't know whether it's important. So, one of the things that we encourage people to do is to take an agile approach. Don't do everything at once. Do it, maybe journey by journey, page by page. If you want to do a track everything approach, do it in chunks. Find out what data is important. And then please, I implore, take the tags off that aren't. Too many GA setups are full of tags that were never needed and no one uses, and it's a bad habit everyone got into. So use GA4 as a purge. Get to a clean slate, and then if you add things that aren't useful, go in and take them back out, please.
I really think optimization is about prioritization ultimately. So it's actually saying, okay, well, what are we in business for? We want to hit these revenue targets. Well, they're going to be made up of X number of new customers or existing upsells. So where in the funnel do we want to optimize, and use data to drive that? So exactly what you're saying, Kevin, let's measure it, but then actually Pareto it. What's the 80-20 here? What are the core ones to focus on? And then put appropriate resource there. But it is a thing of going, okay, well, why are we doing this? We want to hit revenue targets each month. Okay, what's that made up of, and where in the funnel are we looking to dial things up? And that determines where we put the resource. So yeah, analysis paralysis is a big risk here, but that requires strategic people to go, well, what are we actually trying to do, and focus on that.
Okay, and in terms of the kind of migration from Universal to GA4, I mean, I think we understood that they're going to start to switch off elements of it in July, or as soon as. Do we know when they'll finally migrate across to GA4 entirely?
Oh, well, it will be, you will no longer be able to feed data into Universal Analytics in July. So in terms of the hard deadline, that is it. I think I think Google will still allow you to report from Universal Analytics beyond, but we don't know when that deadline is going to be. So July really is, I'd say if anything now, you might start to see things like Google Ads, that connection there. Those are the things that we're seeing switched off now, but July is the hard stop.
Okay. So I guess clients should be asking their agencies now as to what the implications are for them and the way in which they spend their money, and what they will be doing differently from July, and what they need to prepare in advance of that. So that's a good starting point. There's also some really good stuff in the chat room about ways and places that you can go to get help, studies that you can download, and so on and so forth. So again, we'll supply all those resources. But for me, I think the kind of general point is, change is happening. It's a great opportunity. It's also an opportunity not to do nothing, because you have to do something, however beige your business or website is. And you need to get smart, and get smart quickly, either with your resources internally, or if you work with an agency, insist that they're actually focused on that too, for your commercial advantage. Anything you would like to say, Marcus, in sort of summing up today's presentation? I'd just like obviously to say thank you to you and Daisy and to Kevin Lots of stuff that I completely didn't understand, but lots of stuff that I did understand. And thank you for putting it in layman's terms, because it was really helpful for me. And I'm kind of conscious now, obviously, it's now about action.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what this allows us, from my understanding, is it's just getting us closer to the truth, so we can make those better business decisions, measure the full funnel, all the touch points, all the tills ringing, and hopefully people feel more empowered to speak to their agencies, get a geek, map it out, focus on strategy and how it works with that. But I want to throw it back to our speakers just to say, what does success look like in 3 years? But paint the beautiful picture, guys, of what this could be, because it's going to be a bit of a faff and some work and back and forth and a learning curve. But if we do this right, we or our clients will get a competitive advantage over people who don't. So what does success look like? What's the dream? What's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for people? Because you started with the rainbows, Kevin. So I want to end on it to bring us back.
Yeah. Well, so for me, it's that Google Analytics is at the heart of your decision making, from marketing planning, from customer experience management, from product development. That you've got that segmented view of your customer. You understand what stage they're at in their customer journey when they're visiting the site, what's important to them, and how you're able to use that to drive conversion. If in 3 years' time that's what people say when they say, how do they use Google Analytics for? Then my work won't be done. I won't be able to retire, but I'll be a happy man.
I think mine comes from the nerdy side, the measurement side. So for me, it's so exciting to have this flexible framework. It's something that we've never ever had before. So my kind of thing in 3 years' time is having this genuinely agile data that we can turn things off, switch things on, quickly measure something new as soon as we want to see it in a platform. So I think that's my key takeaway, is just the potential, the flexibility, and the modularity that this new system provides us with.
Brilliant.
Cool. Well, thank you. Lots of actions, lots to be done, and I really appreciate, Marcus, you steering us through all that. Really, really interesting and useful session. And thanks to everyone for joining us. I think we had nearly over 90 people at one point, so lots of things to discuss, and hopefully just a taster of what's ahead of us.